This episode of the show is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free 30-day trial and free audiobook of your choosing by going to audibletrial.com/missspots. Choose from over 180,000 different titles, such as Chris Jericho's latest book, No is a 4-letter word. It's even narrated by the man himself. Audiobooks are perfect for the person on the move. Believe me, they're great. Maybe you want a mystery novel or a biography of someone you love. Audible has it all. Plus, it's free to try. If you don't like it, which would be weird, cancel and keep your free audiobook that you downloaded forever. Go try it now at audibletrial.com/missspots. Audible. Listening is the new reading.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game.
Welcome back to the Missspots podcast on missspots.com, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn, and Geek Life Radio. My name is Mike, and with me, as always, is the Nia Jax to my Enzo Amore. Here's Kevin.
Are you trying to say that we are uncomfortably romantically entwined?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm probably saying.
Okay, cool.
All right, let's get to this episode. So, we got Raw and Smackdown live to go over. I think, as far as I thought about it, pretty eventful episodes, but not enough to really, I think, keep me super interested through it all.
Yeah, if you want to look down just to spoil this, not the spoilers, but the rundown of them and not actually watch the shows, particularly with SmackDown having the crowning of the United States Championship, which they had moved up from the pay-per-view to next week, then moved up to the show itself, which is so bizarre. Yeah, you would have thought that it might be a little more exciting, but I'm having a hard time being invested going into Royal Rumble, quite honestly. I think a lot of it also is things that they could not help, which was all these stars going down with injuries. There's been a lot.
Yeah.
And you got Samoa Joe now not going to be available for that. You've got obviously Dean Ambrose being injured.
Jason Jordan apparently injured.
Which we're not sure exactly where that's going to go. They haven't addressed that, but yeah, they've been handed a Raw deal in certain ways, but you got to roll with it and keep putting on good television. Do we want to just jump into Raw? Are we ready for that? Okay. So the Braun Strowman storyline that ran through this episode is one of those storylines that I like, and I've always talked about on our episodes, is a thread, a consistent storyline starting and kind of touching in on every 15 minutes or so or 30 minutes or so throughout the episode. That was a cool thing with this Braun storyline. It was just bananas.
Oh, they added logical explanations into things, which WWE never does. Then they just went full-blown crazy person.
Well, and this is what it comes down to. So good things about this opening promo from Braun. We haven't seen this a lot, and Braun doesn't get a lot of mic time because he doesn't need it. And even when they put him out there in the ring, they did exactly what they need to do. He just yelled a bunch, told us a very short story, which was gorgeous, and just was in character the whole time. Everything was well written, and it was short, and it was sweet, and it was concise. Kurt Angle coming out, interrupting, like everyone always interrupts everybody else, and telling them, listen, you're fired. What you did, you tried to, Braun casual attempted murder Strowman, once again tried to casually murder people, and Kurt Angle said, rightfully, you're not allowed to be here anymore. This is all perfectly logical. And of course, the first thing we're thinking is, well, how are they going to get him back on the show? He's not going to be gone, and they're not even going to have him gone for very long, because the prospect of Braun Strowman not part of a match between Kane and Brock Lesnar, there is no match that people would rather not see than Kane versus Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
So we knew that wasn't going to happen. But all of this was very logical. It made a lot of sense, and I was sitting there going, this isn't WWE's MO. This is not how they run. You can try to murder multiple people and you don't even get suspended for a week. So I thought that was interesting, but I found, and I liked that part of it. I will say also that the commentary did not even sell this very well. They weren't shocked. They weren't amazed. They weren't saying, what is this ramifications? It was almost very downplayed, like, oh, Braun's gone. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they're going on to the next segment.
It was kind of like Graves was like, and rightfully so. Now, what's next?
Yeah, I thought that was a little bizarre, but it makes sense knowing what everyone knew, that it was not going to even last a whole episode of Raw. Braun ended up just going on a rampage, and that's what we got kind of throughout the entire evening, leading up to him being rehired by Stephanie McMahon, which Stephanie called and said Braun is rehired. So basically what Braun
Steph didn't even have to be on the TV show to emasculate Kurt Angle.
Well, what ended up happening with this whole storyline was Braun destroyed a bunch of people in the back, the backstage segments. These were done pretty well. He went into the production truck and did nothing.
Yeah. He just walked around a little bit.
If they were going...
He flipped some switches.
If they were going to do that... Don't have him go in the production truck, because it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Braun is a beast who tore down scaffolding, right, and has flipped over multiple trucks. For him to go into the production thing and not even smash a monitor was ridiculous. Have that door locked, and he can't get it, so then he decides to turn over the trailer or the truck itself. It could have been the same thing, but it looked ridiculous. Him like gingerly walking around, not to ruin anything.
Yes. And all of the people who were working in that you had the woman who was like screaming so fakely. And then none of them actually ran out of the truck. They just went into the very next room. And Braun walked by all of them when he left.
That just was not planned very well. That led up to Braun actually flipping over the truck that tows the trailer. We've seen this before. This was less shocking, obviously, because we've already seen this with the ambulance before.
And there's 20 cuts in there.
Well, yeah, and listen, we know it's gimmicked. I mean, but there was still a camp value to it. There is with all this Braun Strowman stuff. But if you want to run down the timeline, Braun Strowman tries to murder. Braun Strowman next week is fired. Braun Strowman destroys WWE property after being told to leave. Braun Strowman is rehired. Okay, so all you have to do if you're fired is just destroy a bunch of stuff?
I wish I would have known this when I was fired from a restaurant job back in my early 20s.
Just go in there, as I said, drive your car through the front window, and you'll get out, and they'll be like, you know what, you make a good point. You're welcome back. So you can't introduce that kind of logic and then take it away the next moment. It looks even worse.
Also, the thing here that bugs me. We love when WWE gets a little bit campy. It's fun from time to time. But they really go back and forth on how they want us, the viewer, to take in their product. Do we want us to take them seriously as a sports entertainment thing? Or are they really wanting us to think that they are just they know it's not real, so do you want kayfabe to exist anymore, or do you not want kayfabe? Because this was an instance where you are blatantly telling us that this is all ridiculous. This is all bonkers scripted stuff. There's no way that any logical person could believe that was real stuff, could suspend disbelief for that. So do you want us to think of it as fake, or do you want us to somewhat pretend that it's real? They want whatever is convenient for what they're trying to do. That segment, quite honestly, not even that episode, not that storyline, that segment. Yeah. And this happens on a regular basis. So that was the Braun Strowman storyline. I give them credit for introducing that. He took out Michael Cole. Yes, he did. He did take out Michael Cole, which always is a great thing, and is the biggest babyface move in the history of professional wrestling. Take out Michael Cole. The only thing that could have gotten Braun Strowman more over if he had actually murdered Kevin Dunn.
If he had found him whatever hole he's in, whatever.
I thought I saw him in that truck scene.
Well, I know he's like notorious for not being on camera and not having pictures and stuff taken of him. But yeah, that's the only thing they could have done for that. And we did have Tom Phillips replacing Michael Cole, which makes perfect sense because Tom Phillips is the lead broadcaster for the dreaded rival SmackDown that is constantly at war for ratings with Raw. It makes sense that they have Tom Phillips just backstage ready to step in just in case, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, because the brand warfare. So that was the Strowman storyline. You kind of weren't into it like me, right?
No.
Yeah. Once again, I give them credit for starting the "you're fired" thing. If they would have had this happen 3 weeks ago and found some other way to bring him back, it could have made a little more sense. But within the context of one show, and not even one whole show, it was kind of ridiculous. Mm-hmm. The first match that we got was a rematch from the week before with the Bar going up against Titus Worldwide. The Titus Worldwide had a fluky roll-up victory from the week before, and second verse is same as the first. We had Jason Jordan being the ever so present interruption guy who comes out with his music blaring, interrupts everything, distracts somebody, and once again, we get Titus Worldwide going over the Bar. Where is that going, in your opinion?
I don't know. Touche to them for not going 50-50 and immediately giving the Bar their win back, because then it's just like everything else. I would like to think that this coming Monday will be the Bar getting their win back. Otherwise, it just doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere. I don't know. It doesn't look like it would be something they would add them into the tag team title match, but who knows? With the way then the Good Brothers got involved with things at the end, like, who knows if they don't just throw both teams now and make it a fatal four-way.
And we've seen this happen before.
Yeah.
We just recently.
WrestleMania.
We saw this happen with SmackDown. We had a lined up with American Alpha 2.0 going against the Usos that had two extra teams thrown into there at the last minute. So yeah, there's precedence for that for sure. I'm not a huge fan. I do like the fact that Jason Jordan continues to be this sniveling baby face. I'm kind of digging his character, and the fact that he distracts and does the heel thing there works for his story. I just don't know how great that is for the Bar. But good for them for getting Titus Worldwide actually something to do. So there's at least that. Cedric Alexander going over Tony Nese makes a lot of sense. Cedric Alexander is still chasing after Enzo Amore.
It's a pretty good match, too.
Pretty good match. And that I just can't get over it. That lumbar check always looks ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah, so, some of those guys sell it a little better than others, but still almost every cruiserweight can sell that move like it is death. Yeah,
especially being the smaller guys that can bounce around like a pinball there look really good for that. And we had Goldust once again helping out Cedric Alexander, another odd couple, I think you might want to say. But that storyline is progressing nicely. Nia Jax versus Asuka. My first question to you is why? Why now? Why this way?
It's a big pay-per-view quality match.
Asuka is the end-all, be-all right now in the women's division. She is undefeated through NXT and the main roster. She has an aura around her. They have sold her up and down to death as being the most dangerous and dominant woman in the division. And Nia Jax has been talked about in the same way, off and on for 2 years, but never once delivered. She has never delivered at all when it counted. And she's still very limited in the ring, very limited on the mic, still has all kinds of issues. In a well-protected feud, built right, spaced out properly, this could be an epic clash. We don't even know what Nia Jax is. She's hooking up with Enzo Amore, who's supposed to be a heel, but is the most entertaining thing in the cruiserweight division. She's playing a baby face in some ways and kind of not getting along with Alexa Bliss, but a heel against... There's no defined character here. They've got the Royal Rumble match for the first time for the women coming up in a week or so, and they're throwing this match out there as filler, it felt like. I just don't get it.
Yeah, she is a very confusing character. It goes back to kind of what you were saying. she is whatever they want her to be for that particular segment. Because we have seen a tense friendship at best with her and Alexa. But there's, after this match where Nia was selling the knee injury, Alexa came out and looked genuinely concerned.
Yeah.
And played up, hey, we're good friends. And that was just... pick one direction or another.
And I'm also frustrated. It just seems scattershot. There's not a lot of focus going on with the actual Rumble itself and Alexa Bliss as the champion, which is the prize for winning the Rumble. It does not seem like they're going week to week and just throwing out matches for the sake of throwing out matches to fill up time. And I'm just not a fan of that kind of booking. And I'm not a fan of wasting a kind of match and an idea with Nia and Asuka that could be huge later on.
Yeah. They love to, we've talked about this before. They love to put these first time ever matches together, or WrestleMania quality match. Well, if it's a WrestleMania quality match, save it for WrestleMania.
And I also don't know who this match worked for. I don't know who it got over more than they were before. It seems like a holding pattern for sure. This all ended with Nia Jax being injured on the outside, making it in the ring by the 10 count, but not being able to proceed as the referee called because she had a leg injury.
At least they found a new way of an out for Nia Jax in a match. She has had the most outs in matches without being pinned or made to
Nia
submit.
Jax's kryptonite is the ring post.
Yes.
She has hit the ring post 134 times to knock herself out. This was almost like that. This was the steps that are connected to the ring post. So they need to just keep her away from that whole area. That should be her strategy going forward. Really excited to see that the Revival was featured on this episode of Raw. They went over some enhancement talent. They had some particularly brutal looking offense. They did their deal, right? They did what the Revival do really well in the context of a short squash match. Then the in-ring promo happened, and we had them being interviewed in-ring. This crowd was not good.
Yeah.
And we can say that for a lot of crowds, so maybe that's just in general that the WWE crowd is not good. But they were not interested in a lot of things. They were chanting a lot of people like they thought it was still in 2001. And they did not respond really well to this promo. I, on the other hand, responded very well to this promo.
I think a lot of people, at least on the internet, seem to respond very well to that promo.
The big thing that came out of that is they said they are not sports entertainers. They're professional wrestlers. And they talked about them being throwbacks and saying, oh, you consider the guys that are going to show up at the 25th anniversary of Raw to be old school? They're not old school.
Yeah.
They're not classic tag teams. We are. We put in more time than anybody else to be the best at what we do. And overall, this is the exact tone that I would hope that they would strike as the Revival. And whether or not they're going to be able to run with this for more than a week, I can already see Vince McMahon regretting the idea of having them say that and pulling that back and just homogenizing them to be like everybody else. But for at least for 1 week, I thought they struck the perfect tone and everything clicked.
Oh, yeah. I loved everything about this other than, the crowd's reaction to it. It was great.
Specifically saying management will not change who we are, or basically the guys in the back. I loved it. I really did. Elias was there to introduce The Miz once again.
MC again, yeah.
Right? The same thing. So they're trying to find things for him to do that are not specifically related to wrestling. I think it's a problem. It shows that long-term booking, they don't really have a lot for him to do right now. And I think that's something that they're going to need to flesh out, because he's in danger of not capitalizing on the momentum that he's been building for all this time. It needs to transition into in-ring success or failures for him, just like it needed to do that for the Fashion Police, just like it needed to do for Damien Mizdow. And they've never been able to capture that lightning in a bottle. And they're in danger here of missing the boat on that again. I did love the fact that Elias seemed genuinely concerned for Michael Cole, because the fact that Michael Cole fawns over him like nobody else, that was a nice little tie-in that I thought was good. And he also mentioned John Cena in his promo. Yeah. That tells me that Samoa Joe, I did not know that Samoa Joe was already not going to be able to be cleared for the Rumble. Apparently he's going to be back shortly afterwards. At least that's the rumors that I've heard after I heard this. But the second he mentioned Cena, with Joe mentioning Cena the week before, that meant to me that Joe and Cena is scrapped.
Yeah.
And they're going to go with Elias and Cena maybe out of the Royal Rumble. Good for Elias, really bad for Samoa Joe, and I'm sorry to hear it.
Yeah, it does seem like it will be possible for Joe to be back by WrestleMania. I don't know what time frame in there, if they can get him back at least in a talking role, non-physical role to start some sort of feud, but we'll see. Hopefully he can be.
Real shame on that
He's
side.
had injuries at some of the most inopportune moments.
Sure, and we feel really bad for them, for Samoa Joe specifically on that. The Miz did what The Miz does, but did a really understated promo this week. I thought that there wasn't a lot of intensity and yelling. It was very much more calm, cool, and collected. He didn't have to yell. He did a different kind of Miz promo. His game
His
continues,
range is pretty far.
and it continues to evolve, and I just continue to love it. What else is there to say?
I was kind of intrigued by him talking about the fans and kind of siding with them and how they were happy to see him come back.
And he didn't do that and then immediately cut them down.
Yeah.
I have not predicted, but hoped for a Miz babyface turn at some point. I think he could really do it. Maybe planting the seeds, seeing how that's going to work out, because I do think that if it was pulled in the right way, it could be very big for them. That this was the prelude to a 2-on-1 handicap match. We now do these all the time. Yeah. The 2-on-1 handicap match is the lumberjack match of 2018. We're going to have a bunch of those.
That's what it's looking like.
I do not know who a 2-on-1 handicap match works for. I don't think it helps anybody. I think they're relatively boring matches, and I don't think they have the effect that they want them to have. No one cares that Roman Reigns overcame the odds. He's expected to. He's going against guys that he's vastly superior to. It just makes the heels look bad. It makes Roman look like he's been wasting his time. That's my thoughts on that. What are yours?
The only time that really works, and I think it only mildly works, is in instances where you are initially building up like a monster, like Braun and Nia were when they first came to Raw, or when they repackaged Braun. It can help in those instances, but really nowhere else does it help anyone. Because the person who is the one, we typically are expecting them to overcome those odds and win. So it doesn't look impressive to beat two people. It doesn't help the two people who lost because they got beat by one guy. And if by some chance the two people beat the one person, it's not anything special because it was two people.
Yeah. I just don't know who it helps. I don't know how you book that to make any kind of sense for anybody there. Sasha Banks versus Sonya Deville. Sonya Deville, for the second week in a row, looks more and more like every other woman on the roster. Mm-hmm. Her hair done differently. She used to, at least the week before, she had a braid in there.
Yeah, she had half her head braided.
I know it's a small thing, but homogenizing these women, and you will actually, if you look at SmackDown the next night, Sarah Logan, again, looking more and more like every other woman on the roster. They are so terrified to not have every woman be pure sex appeal. I know we're in the era of the women's division, not the divas division, but you're kidding yourself if you don't think the most important thing is the fact that guys find those women attractive. And they continue to push it that way. And if they didn't, they would let a woman like Sonya Deville have her gimmick, look different, present herself differently than having to have her conform to those norms. It's a shitty thing we have to talk about in the context of a wrestling match because it should be about the work in the ring. And Sonya Deville looked pretty good here. I think that she has the most upside of anyone in these stables. these new women's stables that aren't that new anymore. And I think that there's a lot of work that can be done and put into her to develop an actual character. And it should have been around this MMA style fighter and not around what they're transitioning into is to
a group of girls.
Yeah. So that's a shame, but she did go over here. And that's the first step into actually making this heel team have some teeth to it. We should mention that Paige is, for what we understand from all reporting, completely done as an in-ring competitor. She was injured in a house show by a kick by Sasha Banks that she wasn't expecting. She has some kind of neck or spinal injury, and they are saying, at least reporting through secondary sources, that she is completely done.
They did announce she's not going to be in the Rumble.
Did they announce it because of an injury, or I didn't hear it.
I think they did say injury. They glossed over. It was just like a passing moment to commentary. They said it and then just moved on.
But she was still out there in her gear as still with this group. So I don't know if she'll take on more of a managerial role. She definitely can talk. She still has value to give to the company, and we hope that she's able to do. But it's such a shame. She's 25, 26 years old. Yeah. And when she showed up, she was going to be a revelation to the women's division, and for many reasons, it never really happened. Even though she was a multi-time champion, she never reached even the heights that Becky Lynch and Charlotte have. So, and that's a shame.
Yeah, and it seemed like it was a freak accident, and I did see at least one particular person saying yes, while Brian Alvarez from the Observer saying, okay, it's a freak accident, but this is a person who has a history of neck issues. Why do you even put yourself into a situation where you could be taking a kick to the back of your neck where you don't see anyway? It's not like, I mean, when Steve Austin had his neck injury, he never took bumps that were going to be on the top of his head. No pile drivers ever again.
Yeah.
So why do you put yourself into a situation like that is a little crazy, but I mean, you still feel bad for her.
And every time this injury bug starts to hit a bunch of people, we start to hear things about the work rate and how they're doing things. And it doesn't bode well for guys like Shinsuke Nakamura and guys that have a stronger style, because that's what happens. I mean, have we seen Hideo Itami since he busted up Brian Kendrick's face?
Not on Raw.
I don't believe so. And that was a big deal for him to show up. He showed up to save Finn Balor, was given a big introduction. I don't necessarily know that's because they've soured on him already, but they have to worry about things like this. And we like that strong style. We want these guys to be protected, and we don't want them to be injured in real life. That's the last thing we want to see. Matt Hardy went up against Heath Slater. Matt Hardy continues finally has a Tron, an entrance that is not the old Hardy Boys imagery. It works pretty well for Matt. And this was just your typical match. I don't think we saw Bray, did we? I do not remember seeing Bray at all. Not. That's a fine thing. He doesn't need to show up and just laugh at each other again like they did the previous week. So that was just to keep Matt, that character, out there. But they need more. They need more for this.
Really do.
They either need to go all in and go pure camp or pull it back. Right now, they're in this middle ground.
According to Matt on Twitter, and I guess you can take that for whatever it means, he says that the rest of the characters are coming soon. That it is imminent that they are coming, and that word is that there is going to be a final deletion match put together at some point. Okay. So we'll see.
We will see. The main event of the evening was Finn Balor versus Seth Rollins. And this was a match that was set up by Jason Jordan, saying that Seth Rollins needs to get his mojo back because he took a pinfall the week before. And he kind of got this match set up, and Seth was not mad about this. He basically said he didn't care that he did it. It was how he did it. And I do like this mentoring relationship that they have. Overall, I like the Jason Jordan stuff going on right now. I'm more interested in his character than I ever have been before. I think he's doing a good job with it. What I don't like is the fact that I was not at all excited about this match. I was tuning out all the time. I was in the middle of doing other things. there was no excitement for me with this. Seth is lukewarm. Finn is lower than that. And the fact that he has rejoined with some old running mates in Anderson and Gallows, and he has not really heated up at all because of that, is a damn shame.
Yeah, now, that's like... I know that in WWE canon, the Balor Club, the Bullet Club, doesn't really have history there, but it would be like them just making the Shield back together without making a big deal about it. You have these guys come together. There should have been more story behind it. There should be more grandeur behind it.
There should be a lead up to it. They should have some other interaction with other people behind
and they should
scenes.
be running roughshod on people right now.
And they should also be finding out who they are. We don't know who these guys are as a faction, if that's even what they are. But Anderson and Gallows accompanied him to ringside. They came out there with him to very little fanfare. We didn't hear about them early on at all during the night. Checking in with them when the match was announced would have been a nice thing. Right now, Finn Balor and to a greater extent, Anderson and Gallows are directionless. We don't really know anything about them. We don't know about any of their desires, what they're trying to accomplish together as a team. We have no idea who they are, and they have no place that we know that they're going to be going. Seth is in that strange bedfellows partnership with Jason Jordan, which is 100% a placeholder. And we're going into Royal Rumble, which is going into WrestleMania season, and none of these guys are hot at all. And they're
Seth was in one of the big storylines going into Mania last year. You have no clue where they're going with him right now.
And that's what's capping Raw off. Now, what we did get at the end of this was we saw the reintroduction of the curb stomp, which I now think they're going to be calling the Blackout.
Yeah.
And
that was what it was called in NXT.
Oh, is that what they called it in NXT? Okay. So that was a big deal. There was actually an audible gasp when we saw that from the crowd. From the crowd. Crowd? From the crowd.
It's crawfish in the crowd.
Yeah, from the crowd. That was a big thing. And I read a couple articles this week, or I guess it was in the last 48 hours, talking about the fact that maybe one of the things Seth has been missing was that great finisher, because he has not been the same guy in a while. And a lot of that has to do with poor booking and kind of the direction his character's gone in. But there was an audible gasp when that move was put on, when Finn bounced off that mat. And there was no doubt once that happened, when I saw that Finn wasn't taking that pinfall. He wasn't kicking out of that.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't know that about the ripcord knee or whatever. They never even really gave it a name. King's Landing at one point they called it, but that didn't really stick. So maybe this is going to help Seth. I'm surprised that they brought that back and gave it a name. They would not have brought that back other than in a big match situation if they weren't going to use it consistently, I feel like.
Yeah, and because they gave it the new name, it's almost as if maybe the name was the issue that they had with it, and they wanted it to go away for a little bit to remove the stigma of, it is a somewhat racially motivated name when you look at like American History X.
And it's also not a good name for a babyface to be using as his finisher. So there's some intrigue there. We also got a strange pinfall, though, in the fact that it looked like the ref had counted early on in the match, I should say, when it looked like the ref had counted 3 for Finn with a pin on Seth. With several replays, it looks like the first count didn't count, so to speak. Yeah. He just had to move himself back into position. But from the first time you saw that in the crowd, he counted 3 easily.
Oh, I mean, you could hear 3 hits on the mat.
Right.
But
that does happen sometimes.
Yes.
As the referee's falling down to the mat to get into
get
position,
that.
Sometimes
that
you get that
sound.
Yeah. So and then the way that they showed this afterwards and the implications that might mean for these guys all together, could that whole thing have been on purpose?
If so, then well done.
So,
very well executed.
Great timing and well executed. But it seemed almost too perfect for the fact that they put these two guys against each other and not having one of them go over cleanly in one way. The intrigue was all at the very end of this, and I'm hoping this is you need to heat both these guys up. going into the Rumble and WrestleMania, and specifically Finn needs some direction. And Seth could really use, especially with Dean gone and not having the Shield to lean on, Seth needs to become the babyface breakout that we know he can be.
Mm-hmm.
That they didn't give him a chance to be when he came back from his last injury.
Yeah.
So that was me.
All right, so let's head into SmackDown Live, and I was shocked that we didn't start with "Here comes the money." We got the New Day coming out to start things off, and we get a New Day promo that was New Day, and they had this somewhat political look to what they were doing and what they were talking about Woods' match with Jinder coming up, and they went right into this match. Now, I want to say that I thought that all three of the U.S. title tournament matches that went on this evening were all good matches.
I agree.
But there was just something about it that, well, we'll get into that maybe in a little bit because it has to do with the winners. So we had Jinder versus...
Don't be afraid. We can talk about the whole tournament right now if you want.
Okay.
You do whatever you want to do, Mike.
Okay.
This is big structure.
This is a big Hollywood podcast.
Hollywood, Mike.
So I'm thinking that it had to do with, it's probably not the people who I wanted to see in the finals.
I thought since the beginning that the right people in general weren't in this tournament, and all the interesting people to possibly win that tournament were gone, and the finals was pedestrian. I would
have loved to see Xavier somehow figure out a way to beat Jinder.
Yes.
And then, you know what? Put him up against Mojo in the finals. I think that is pretty intriguing, that you're going to have a first-time guy, a guy who's typically a tag team wrestler, and then a guy who is just breaking out into his own, and apparently they're big on him, so why not? It's the more interesting story than, I just think, Jinder, who no one cares about, and Bobby Roode, who we've been talking about, has just mainly been put across as a entrance.
Bobby Roode is boring. And that is not Bobby Roode was not boring in NXT. Bobby Roode was a great heel with a good shtick, talk the talk, walk the walk. His vignettes were sharp. Bobby Roode as a heel, as a narcissistic heel, is perfect. His whole gimmick is he's a narcissist. His whole entrance is he's a narcissist. Right now, who's Bobby Roode? He's a good guy in name only that says glorious a bunch. That's all he is. There's nothing else to him. There's none of this, I was in another promotion that I never got a chance to be here, and now I'm here, and you guys are all going to know my name. That's at least a babyface motivation you could use. They've used nothing. They've developed nothing. They have put no thought into his character, and because of that, no one gives a damn. Jinder is rejected by everybody for the wrong reasons. He's not over in any way. He's just, they want him to go away. I still think there is utility in Jinder Mahal, just so you know that. But he was not the right person to put in this situation. Xavier was a much more interesting choice. Mojo, who I am not high on at all, was a much more interesting choice for this. Ty Dillinger, early on in that, was a much more interesting choice to run the table and maybe shock the world and get a shot at the U.S. title. There were all kinds of people not involved in this that were a much better choice, that are more over, that are more interesting. Rusev is the first name that springs to mind.
Oh, yeah?
Rusev winning this and being a babyface, basically doing it, would have been everything for the U.S. title at this point. The way that they shook this thing out, it was just flat across the board.
Mm-hmm. After this, we had a little interview with AJ and Renee Young. Nothing important there. But then we had Bobby Roode versus Mojo. You know what? Mojo's getting better in the ring. I mean, he had a good ring general to help him with this match. But I thought he looked good in the match. It was a good match. He has a dumb entrance with terrible music.
Yes.
And his name is Mojo Rawley.
Strike three.
Yeah. These are terrible things.
But no, I agree with you. I think it was a pretty good match. with the right kind of attention, there's a lot to do with Mojo Rawley. He can work. But yeah, him losing this match was the less interesting thing.
Yeah.
Even for a guy that is not nearly as talented as Bobby Roode. Because at least we know Mojo Rawley just turned heel. At least we know that he's pissed off that he felt like he was held back by Zack Ryder. At least we know that he has a mean streak and is willing to do anything to win. At least we know that about him. He's not just a guy that says glorious.
Mm-hmm. After the match, the Singh brothers attacked Roode, and this led to Bobby Roode saying, hey, let's not wait till next week. Let's do this now. Jinder was like, nah, we're not going to do this. But Brian comes out and goes, yeah, we are going to do this. Later on, we're going to have the finals. This is very strange that they moved this title match twice within pretty much 24 hours.
Very interesting that they decided, first of all, not to have this on the pay-per-view. Is very bizarre to me. Mm-hmm. And then, but once they didn't do that, I actually think that this was a cool thing. I like the fact there's some anticipation for next week, and they go, you know what, we're going to do this right now. They never do that. It always is the heel going, oh, you want to do this tonight? You want to do this tonight? Hometown crowd? Well, you know what? We're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. That's the way it always plays out. And for Daniel Bryan to come out, and I don't know if you noticed this, Mike, did not come out to his music.
He did not. No, he just kind of showed up behind Jinder.
Which makes much more sense to have a guy come out there spontaneously and go, oh, you know what? We're going to do this. And his music hits afterwards. Perfect. I liked everything about this, and I liked the fact that they did this on SmackDown. I thought this made it interesting, and it felt different. That worked.
Yeah. Then we got women's multi-person match number 527.
Pointless women's tag match with the Riot Squad. This has happened 40 times now.
Yeah.
You're right.
And after the veterans dominated the rookies, so to speak, for most of the match, ends up turning around and the Riot Squad gets the win. Okay.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care about the Riot Squad. I don't care at all. They're uninteresting. They've been booked poorly. And I don't even care what happens next. They're going to have to do a lot to get me back into that.
Mm-hmm. And then we get a backstage segment with the Usos being interviewed, trying to let us know which one is which there for a little bit.
They were confused for a while.
They were very confused. They get jumped by Gable and Benjamin, and just a lead-in more to their 2 out of 3 falls match.
Another fine way to progress a story without a in-ring match. Yes, absolutely. We know who you are. You're the former tag team champs.
Yes.
Like it a lot.
And then we get the main event, the finals for the U.S. title, Bobby Roode versus Jinder Mahal. It's a fine match. Like I said, I thought all 3 matches in the semis and then the finals were all fine matches, but I'm just not interested in Jinder Mahal. I'm not interested in Bobby Roode at any point during this. It's like, I hate saying that because I do love Bobby Roode. I think that he's great when he's given direction, but he's just hasn't had a direction that he's going in. And it just seems so crazy for me to say, I don't care about seeing him lifting up a title belt at the end of Raw.
SmackDown.
SmackDown.
I'm right there with you. I wasn't even watching a lot of this match. I had no interest whatsoever in it. And I've already given all the reasons why. He's not interesting. None of this made a lot of sense to me. None of this worked altogether, except for the structure of the tournament. I liked that. But there were just so many different people that should be in that position right now. And they've got a lot of work to do. Now, if this title turns Bobby Roode heel, I'm all for it. He has a belt around his waist, starts to become much more narcissistic. I'm all about that because he is a much, much better heel. Let him be a heel and let the people turn him babyface. That's a much more interesting story for me. And I am really not excited about the prospect of Dolph Ziggler showing up at Royal Rumble and confronting Bobby Roode and having that feud again. Mm-hmm. It sucked the first time. It will suck again.
Yeah, pretty
and you
much.
know it's coming.
Mm-hmm. So that does it for SmackDown Live. I guess one thing we can mention real quick as well is they announced that Goldberg was the first inductee into the Hall of Fame,
the headliner
for this year.
Yeah,
and after coming back last year and doing all that he did, I guess it makes a lot of sense for that to occur. And I recently saw I'm trying to see if I can find the particular tweet, but I'm having a little bit of trouble finding it because he actually tweets a good bit. There was a tweet made by Brian Pillman Jr. that kind of hinted at the possibility of his late father being a Hall of Fame inductee.
Oh, really?
And I think that would be a really cool one. And honestly, someone who I never thought of, but I think is very deserving of it. I mean, his career obviously was cut very short, but I thought that he was doing the best work of his career when he came into the WWE.
But it was for a short period of time, and it wasn't a lot in the WWE, and he was injured before his death. He was injured early on, and so he wasn't have a chance to do a lot of the things that they were planning on having him do. But I think that would be an interesting one. We also do have the 25th anniversary of Raw next week.
Yes,
with
a simulcast.
Yeah, a metric fuck ton of nostalgic characters, I believe is the correct term there, showing up. I read, and I encourage everyone listening, if you haven't already, go to whatculture.com. There was a great article that I am going to steal some ideas from because I share these sentiments, and we've talked about this a lot. That says, what's wrong with the 25th anniversary of Raw? What are the possible pitfalls of that? And it details a lot of the things that we've talked about in this podcast, and the fact that 10 years from now, they're not going to be able to do the 35th anniversary of Raw without the same exact people coming out as nostalgic acts, because they have not created new stars. The stars from the Attitude Era are who they're pushing right now, really, on this. And 10 years from now, they're still going to have to push the stars from the Attitude Era because we are so burnt out on guys like Cena and Randy Orton. They'll probably still be wrestling on a regular basis at that point because they've created nobody else to fill those shoes. And the other bodies from that time period, they never really got behind other people and gave them the chance to flourish. And the guys from the early 2000s, guys like CM Punk, probably not going to be around. We have talked about the WWE's inability to make stars and the WWE's inability to really get behind somebody to let their own personalities flourish and get those crossover guys. We don't really even have Godfathers and Val Venuses in these days. I think the closest would be people like the Fashion Police, but they're even more ancillary characters than some of these guys aren't even wrestling. You might think someone like Elias would be one of those guys, but he doesn't even wrestle half the time. Godfather went out and wrestled matches. Yeah. They weren't always very good, but he actually went out there and wrestled matches. So I thought that was a great article. I thought it detailed a lot of the things, once again, that we talk about. And I think it also speaks to what Mike talks about a lot about nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. Eventually that goodwill runs out. Eventually there's nobody to kind of feed this Attitude Era Kool-Aid to anymore about how wonderful this was and how everything was great and how, you remember this so we can get you back into professional wrestling. We're not going to have that eventually. And eventually Shawn Michaels, there'll be no more rumors of Shawn Michaels coming back to fight AJ Styles because it's already too past. He's not doing that. Mm-hmm. But people can still dream. People can still dream that Stone Cold Steve Austin will come out of retirement. Even though it's already passed, we're going to be past the point of people even talking about it in the next 5 years. Who else do you have? What guys are laying back there that you can have that same kind of nostalgia for? Not many. The WWE is at a crisis point when it comes to that. And their continued insistence on having lukewarm headliners like Roman Reigns, who is over in the fact that everyone cares about him, but not over at all in the fact of everyone liking him as a babyface, and certainly not at all as over as Daniel Bryan was, as Stone Cold Steve Austin, as The Rock, as Mick Foley even. their insistence on not allowing these characters to develop in what might be a more natural way is going to poison this company's ability to fall back on those guys 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And, out of all of those people that were listed, there's one interesting one on that list. I mean, there's a lot of interesting ones, but we're going to have The Undertaker there. But Chris Jericho was listed in that. Word is Jericho hasn't signed a deal to appear on that. They haven't made a deal yet.
Oh, really?
And WWE got a little ahead of themselves by announcing him. Apparently, New Japan doesn't care.
Yeah.
But he's still involved with New Japan. He started a new feud.
Oh, and New Japan doesn't care because that's more eyes on their product when he shows up on Raw. No, that's smart on their part.
But it will be interesting to see if he actually is there and how they use him.
Yeah.
Because, he technically working for another company right now.
Can I ask you, are you excited for this episode at all?
A little bit. I'm excited about the portions that will be in the Manhattan Center because that old classic look and feel for a wrestling show. I used to watch Ring of Honor a lot, and I loved when they ran the Manhattan Center because it looked like old Raw and old ECW shows. And I'm looking forward to that. It is weird that this is also the go-home show for Royal Rumble. To be having a gimmicky show also serve as your go-home. I'm sure that there's going to be just a number of segments that have a lot of people in them just to get them out of the way so that they're not eating up a lot of segment time. But yeah, it's other than that, I'm just like this is like one of those tours of like a bunch of bands that are way past their prime, just like that had one hit in the 90s or something. It's like, oh, God, I don't care.
Up until I think about it more than 30 seconds, I'm excited about this. The second I give it any more thought than that, I'm actually I'm more like nervous about it. Because Stone Cold Steve Austin's going to go out there and stunner a bunch of heels.
Yeah.
And that you're going to have the APA show up and bury a tag team. You're going to have that stuff happen. I hate when they do that. There's no benefit to that. It has no downstream effects that are positive. It gives a momentary pop to that crowd, right? So I'm actually more, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see these guys come out and bury a bunch of current talent and show us even more that why they're not as important.
Okay. Who does Stone Cold stun? Elias?
Most likely Elias.
Or Miz?
Elias, Miz, those are very, very good possibilities. They're going to protect Strowman.
Yeah.
Is Lesnar going to be there?
I don't know.
If he is, they're going to protect Strowman. They're going to protect Lesnar. But Miz is fodder for anyone that wants to beat him up. Elias would definitely be up there in that situation.
And then the APA beats up the Miztourage?
Probably, yeah. But no, I don't see anything good coming out of this. And honestly, it's always a better idea in theory than it is in practice because they never do anything all that interesting. Mm-hmm. I cannot think of a single time that any one of these superstars of yesteryear showed up and after the segment I was like, you know what? That was pretty cool. It's usually like, it was kind of dumb.
Yeah.
That's almost always how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they do it. So yeah, it sounds great. It's going to not be good.
Most likely. I think that's all for the other things.
Yeah. I think we covered everything.
Well, thank you once again to everyone for coming and sharing about an hour of your time with us. Make sure that you follow us on social media. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at MissSpots. We're always live tweeting along to Raw, SmackDown Live, and the pay-per-views. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/missspots. You can listen to this podcast in one of many wonderful fashions, so you can let your friends, family, anyone who's into wrestling know that they can listen to us on our website, misspotspodcast.com, or simply missspots.com, along with iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn, all of the pretty much podcast services that are available out there. You can subscribe to us and get new episodes delivered to you every Thursday free of charge. You can also listen to us on Geek Life Radio every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on geekliferadio.com. For Kevin, my name is Mike. We'll catch you next week for the go home to Royal Rumble. Good night. Good wrestling.